Today, we are comparing two influential figures, Elizabeth Holmes, the infamous founder of Theranos, and Dr. Sophie Chandauka, the current chair of Sentebale. While their paths and industries differ, their strategic use of identity and public credibility shows remarkable similarities and offers a very important lessons about leadership, ethics, and public trust.
In the last week, an extraordinary war of words has broken out between Prince Harry and the woman who chairs the charity he founded in memory of his mother almost 20 years ago. He has now quit the charity, called Sentebale, and said he was heartbroken and that it was devastating that the relationship had broken down with the chair. That is Dr. Sophie Chandauka. She's made stark claims ranging from bullying to misogyny that have been strongly denied by other trustees. Sophie Chandauka has now spoken exclusively to this programme. We've asked the Duke of Sussex for an interview, and sources close to the former trustees have very strongly refuted the claims she makes, describing the allegations as completely baseless. We've also interviewed a former trustee, Dr. Kalelo Leratoli, who denies many of her claims. And you can see that interview during the day on Sky News and online via our website or app. Sophie, thank you for talking to us. Sophie, you and I have known each other for many years, particularly working on diversity in corporate leadership, but I've never had anything to do with your work with Prince Harry. So let's just start with the origins of Sentebale. What was the point? What was the aim of setting it up?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Trevor, for having us here on behalf of the entire Sentebale organization, 540 strong. This is an opportunity for us to just set the record straight and also talk about the future of Sentebale. But where did it begin? Sentebale started as a very urgent response to the urgent need for those who were impacted by HIV and AIDS in Lesotho to be taken care of. Prince Harry and Princess thought that they were uniquely placed to respond to the needs of orphans and vulnerable children, and this was in 2006. Lesotho is a very small country that's within South Africa itself. But as you roll on to 2024, the issues in Southern Africa are actually quite different. HIV and AIDS is no longer a death sentence. And so our organization is really looking at those other elements in the ecosystem that affect the health and well-being of young people. And so at Sentebale, we're focused on health, on wealth, and on climate resilience.
Holmes dropped out of Stanford, then used that fact as a badge of honor.
You're 19, you work your whole kind of high school, you have your eyes set on Stanford, that's all you want to do is get there. You get there and you start thinking about the healthcare business, you start thinking about blood, you start thinking about how you could shift it, and you then say, I'm going to drop out and I'm not going to go work for one of the big competitors, I'm going to start my own thing. Where'd you get the chutzpah to do that? And why did your parents let you, since I won't let my kid get out of college? So I'm
You know, my parents were phenomenal. They let me take the money that would have let my dad retire, and that they'd saved to allow me to go to Stanford and put it into the business. And that gives you tremendous confidence in the context of sort of that blind faith. I didn't plan to do exactly what we're doing now, but I was at Stanford and I was spending all my time trying to think about how would you build a product like this? And we were spending all this money on all these classes that I wasn't going to, and so it just seemed logical not to continue to do that.
But what made you think you could change the way blood is analyzed, the way how accessible it could be? What made you think at 19, I can shift this whole paradigm?
I didn't know that I could, but I knew that I wanted to spend my life doing it, and I wanted to spend my life trying. And I had absolutely no idea how we would do it, but I knew that this was what I wanted to work on, and I felt like this is what I was put on this earth to do. And so I knew that this was where, you go to school, and the purpose of school to me was always to learn the tools to be able to pursue what you love. And I felt like I had those tools to be able to now go obsess over what it was that I wanted to be doing no matter what.
So you go and you start this company with some money from your parents, and you say you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do, but you knew you wanted to do something like this.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when you said, aha, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm capable of shifting?
There were many. I mean, the first was when we developed our first patents and we developed our first architecture for the systems that we're building, and we realized that we were thinking differently, I mean, completely opposite the way that everybody has traditionally been thinking in this space. And we had a little lab that was smaller than the size of this stage, and the first time that you get data showing that these concepts could actually work, I mean, it's the most addictive feeling in the world.
What is that feeling? What was that moment?
That moment is you've created something that's like your baby and it's come to life. And I mean, I've never done drugs, but I'm assuming it's like cocaine. I mean, it's like incredibly addictive, you know? I mean, you've created something that all of a sudden is real, and you work so hard and you fail so much that by the time you've actually reduced something to practice, I mean, I think it is the human spirit in its best, is this concept that you start with that turns into a dream, that turns into reality. It's beautiful.
Linking herself to tech legends like Steve Jobs.
Compare you, I usually don't do this, to Steve Jobs and what he did for computing. I regard you as a visionary, next generation person. Is this the kind of ridiculous pressure that nobody needs?
She created an identity of youthful disruption. In parallel, Sophie Chandauka uses the title DR, an honorary one, not earned through medical or academic research, to speak on biotech, DEI, and philanthropic issues. In both cases, the title is more about perception than qualification. Both figures surrounded themselves with high-profile allies, Holmes with Kissinger and Schultz, Chandauka with boards and royal-linked charities. Both positioned themselves as transformative leaders, but beneath those polished narratives, question emerged about transparency, about substance, about who really benefits.
diversity and inclusion consultancy and global network with a decade of experience. Our team of strategic consultants use a tailored approach to effect tangible cultural change for clients. Driven by both empathy and data, we use tools such as our flagship Radar Diagnostic to understand each company's DEI barriers. We then transform workplaces and mindsets with training, workshops, and leadership programs. Each year, Involve creates global role model lists to celebrate and showcase diverse senior executives.
So we're going to talk about how people use pain and purpose. The use of pain and purpose.
Watch people come in and choose the blood test that they were ordering, and what did that feel like?
It's amazing. I mean, what's amazing is to hear their stories, because you see, I mean, the first time I did that, I met a woman who didn't think that she was going to be able to get the test that she needed to know whether her baby was okay. She was pregnant. And you look at this, and this is real. I mean, people think, oh, well, more people are getting insurance, you know, people are going to get health care. That's not the case. Deductibles are increasing. People can't afford a $2,500 deductible, and the result is they don't get care. And so, I mean, being able to drive home and know that because of something we've built, one person's life is better, to me, and that's the purpose of life. You know, if we're not here tomorrow, you know you've done something meaningful, right?
Now, Elizabeth Holmes, claimed her mission was to democratize healthcare. Chandauka often referenced the black wealth gap and systemic injustices. But here's the hard question. Are these narratives rooted in community services, or are they being used as leverage for personal elevation? Are they opening doors for others or just for themselves? And I did talk about this when I was looking at Sentebale boards, about her claim that she was decolonizing the board of the Sentebale community, as actually wanting everything to be run in Africa, promoting these Pan-Africanist ideologies. But when you look at the board, that board doesn't look anything but. But this is a question for you all to think about. These use of these systemic injustices and these terms like black wealth gap, are they actually benefiting the community, or are they being used as a leverage for personal elevation?
Why did you start in Arizona and not California?
Many reasons. One, we were able to work in a completely bipartisan way to draft legislation, which we passed, making it the first state in the country that gives individuals the explicit right to order their own health information. And it's harder in California, as you know.
To be bipartisan or to get something done?
Well, I don't know, you should answer that question. But we're working on it. It is a very interesting population in the context of the number of people there who are, for example, undocumented immigrants who don't have access to health insurance and who don't engage in the health system unless you can provide them with a really low-cost option. It's got a very interesting distribution of Medicare and Medicaid patients, and part of our work has been to be the first company to bill Medicare and Medicaid at less than they're willing to reimburse, to demonstrate that we can use technology to realize savings for federal and state programs without having to cut other programs or raise taxes, and that created a model to do it. And it's not here, so we couldn't micromanage it, which meant we could really build a model that we could scale.
Elizabeth Holmes kept a tight grip on her board. So is Chandauka. And she seems to have surrounded herself with close allies. from consultants paid by Sentebale to trustees she worked with previously. These governance patterns raise questions about transparency and accountability, especially when charitable platforms are involved. So the core parallel here, the strategic trust building. In both stories, Elizabeth Holmes and Sophie Chandauka, Miss Sophie Chandauka, we see the same playbook. Build trust through identity, control the narrative, and align with cause that resonates deeply, whether it's health, access, or racial equity.
But the truth of the matter is we have to talk about wealth. We have to talk about wealth creation. And one of the big issues has been the dependence of Africa and Africans on aid. We need to move into the entrepreneurial space and create a future that allows for people to fend for themselves and to define their own destinies.
But when personal gain begins to eclipse the community impact, as we've seen with the Sentebale crisis, that trust starts to erode.
Is to educate the consumer that they have the ability to take their health care into their own hands. But part of it is also saying to young women, look what I've done, you can do this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ability and the privilege of being able to communicate in a public way for us is completely about our mission, which is doing whatever it takes for less people to have to go through what it means to say goodbye too soon to someone you love. And as I have had the privilege of doing that, seeing what it means for little girls to come to our lab or to see this and how impactful it is to them, and we need to talk about that so that we can socialize it, so that there are more of those little girls who decide, yeah, that I'm going to do that.
Elizabeth Holmes was eventually convicted of fraud.
Back then, Theranos was a revolutionary idea thought up by Elizabeth Holmes. Her company was one of Silicon Valley's unicorn startups, valued at an estimated $9 billion. In 2015, she was on top of the world. Then, it all came crashing down. The lies of Theranos' technology were exposed, along with the role she played in covering it all up. She was ousted as CEO and charged with massive fraud, and the company was forced to close its labs and testing centers, ultimately shuttering operations altogether. She has been convicted of fraud in federal court. Jurors found her guilty of 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. This is how she went from precious child to ambitious Stanford dropout to an embattled startup founder convicted of fraud.
Sophie Chandauka is not accused of anything criminal, but the patterns of strategic identity, influence, and governance deserve scrutiny. As the public, we need to ask harder questions, especially when leaders profit from platforms meant to uplift the marginalized community. So what do you think? Is this visionary leadership or strategic self-promotion? Let us know in the comment. Subscribe for more analysis that gets behind the headlines.